Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Because it's going to be a great weekend of college basketball. One thing I'll say, and I do kind of say this every year, yes, I work for Fox Sports in addition to the Aaron Torres pod. But one thing I always appreciate, ESPN always does an amazing job of making sure this Saturday between the NFC and AFC championship game and the Super Bowl is loaded with college hoops games. And so I think we need to go ahead and thank them and appreciate them. Give them some credit here because we got a loaded slate. Fox, by the way, has a couple monster games as well. And so let's go ahead and dive in. And by the way, yes, I think ESPN did make a colossal mistake not going to Arkansas for John Calipari's return. Just based on the comment section, I'm pretty sure that it is going to be very lively. So let's go ahead and make picks for those Saturday games. And listen, we've spent the whole show talking about this game, so I'm not going to beat around the bush. Let's talk Arkansas at Kentucky. John Calipari's return, 9 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. It is worth noting we're recording here midday on Thursday. There are no point spreads. I would guess Arkansas is pretty close, or Kentucky's really pretty close to a double-digit favorite. But it is worth noting a few things. Listen, we know Arkansas is not playing very well right now. We know they're not very good. We know that Boogie Flan is out for the year. But obviously, we don't kind of know the status of several players on Kentucky. Lamont Butler, I know that Mark Pope said after the Tennessee game that if we were playing tomorrow, he would not be available. So I'll be curious if Lamont Butler is ready to go. Seemed really banged up those 2 or 3 games before he sat out against Tennessee. And then also on top of that, listen, Andrew Carr, I hope this doesn't sound mean or that I'm rooting against him. I just think that, he missed 2 games, and then he came back for Tennessee, played 2 or 3 minutes, and then came out. I just don't think until I see that kid playing 18, 20, 25 minutes that you can realistically expect him to be a regular contributor for that team. So you get deeper into the bench, you get deeper into guys that are, weren't expected to take on roles that they currently have. And I will say, and I know I'm going to make the chat angry right now, Arkansas, yes, we know they're struggling. It's not, if Lamont Butler cannot play, and obviously Kirk Reese is not playing as well, it's not the worst matchup for Arkansas. Because with Arkansas, listen, we've talked about it time and time again. The offense isn't good. 3-point shooting isn't good. But to me, the big issue for Arkansas, and I keep saying it, is the fact that all season long, it's not just that the 3-point shooting is bad. It's that they're not a good rebounding team as well. And so, listen, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, but with Arkansas, their 2 biggest weaknesses coincide with each other, which makes it just a really, really, really tough spot for Arkansas to actually win games. Because at the end of the day, when you can't shoot well, you have to be able to rebound well. We've talked about it a million times with Texas A&M. Texas A&M is not a good 3-point shooting team, but they are the #1 offensive rebounding team in all of college basketball. And that has an impact, and that weighs on the fact, and that is the reason that they are having success. If you can't shoot, you got to rebound. Arkansas does not. And so I just bring it up because the one win that they have in SEC play, they were able to crash the glass. They were +10 on the boards against Georgia, 18 offensive rebounds. And, what's especially frustrating if you're an Arkansas fan, you sat there and said, maybe we found some blueprint. Maybe we found some formula. Maybe we found something. And then they immediately get killed on the boards against Oklahoma. And so I bring it up because for Arkansas to stay in this game, they have to be able to rebound. And let's be honest, while statistically Kentucky is a good rebounding team, that is not, and the low post is not an area of strength for that team. We've talked about Amari Williams. We've talked about the fact that even Kentucky fans will say in certain games we have played soft. And so that, to me, becomes the big conversation. Can Arkansas get enough second and third chance opportunities to keep themselves in this game? Because ultimately, we know there's going to be a 3-point differential. We know that Kentucky's probably going to hit somewhere in the neighborhood of like 10 to 15 threes. and Arkansas is going to probably hit somewhere in the neighborhood of like 3-5. Okay. So you're already starting with somewhere around a 15-point difference. You have to get second and third chance opportunities. And I will say, I do think you are going to get some version of the best Arkansas team that you're going to get. Now, what is the best Arkansas team relative to the rest of the SEC? It ain't Alabama. It ain't Auburn. It ain't Kentucky at full strength. I'll tell you that. I do think we're going to get some version of the best version of Arkansas, but can they rebound enough? Can they hit enough shots to win? Ultimately, listen, I could beat around the bush. We could do a 10, 15-minute segment on this game alone. We've done enough on this game here on a Thursday afternoon. Listen, I'll pick Kentucky to win. I do think it's a little bit more low scoring. I do think Arkansas has to pressure the ball if they want to win this game. And I do think that's a situation where they can create. Listen, they've started pressing over probably the last 3 or 4 games. If they can press and create some turnovers, that becomes a different conversation. I think it's low scoring. I still think Kentucky wins. I think they're the better team. There's nothing else to say at this point. I'll say Kentucky 71, Arkansas 64, a little bit of a more low-scoring game. Kentucky got to get healthy, but I don't think this is the game where they get exposed. Kentucky gets the victory. Let's go to the next game, and let's get to the other big one that ESPN has decided they need to go to, and that is Duke, Carolina. It is at Cameron Indoor, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday. First of all, I know there's going to be Carolina fans and Duke fans watching this. I'm sorry. ESPN made a mistake. Listen, ESPN should be at Rupp Arena. Rupp Arena is going to be the craziest, wildest environment we've seen in college basketball in years. And whatever you think about John Calipari, he is a Hall of Famer who did bring a national championship to Kentucky. And so there's that variable. And then the other variable is North Carolina isn't good. Like, if the argument is that, well, Arkansas stinks, that's why we didn't send game day to Rupp Arena, okay, fine. You know who else stinks? North Carolina, 13-9 overall, 6-4 in the ACC. And here's the other thing with Carolina. It's not even like they're playing well. It's not like they started, 4-8 and they've won 9 of 10 or whatever. It's like, no. They have lost 3 of their last 4 in a bad ACC. The only win that they have over that stretch is an overtime win against an awful Boston College team. And so, the likelihood of Arkansas, Kentucky not being good is there. The likelihood that Carolina at Duke, with the worst Carolina team that we've maybe seen in a while, that one could get off the rails really quick, because even though Carolina missed the NCAA tournament a few years ago, they still had really good players. Armando Bacot, RJ Davis, Caleb Love. I understand that Carolina does have good players still. Like, Ian Jackson is really good when he's on, but we've seen they're a flawed team that is easily beatable. And I think Duke is actually like a legitimately terrible matchup for North Carolina. Because what's the issue with North Carolina? Like, when I talked about the Pitt game the other day, North Carolina fans got mad. Hey, where's the analysis? It's like, we've had the same analysis on Carolina since May when the roster came together. They're too small. They don't have a big guy. They need a big guy, and they're going to get killed on the boards. And so with Carolina, it's almost like Arkansas. We knew what their weakness was coming into the season. It was a lack of size down low. They're not going to be a great rebounding team. So it's almost the reverse of Arkansas. You have to be a great three-point shooting team. The issue is they shoot 32% from 3. That's not going to get good enough. That's not going to be good enough when you play 4 guards, and that is your best lineup. And so I could go on and on, but you look at Duke. Listen, we know about Duke. We know about Cooper Flagg. And the one thing I will say about Cooper Flagg, he is actually starting to play legitimately his best basketball, which is pretty awesome to see. Like, it's one thing to kind of have a one-and-done superstar. It's one thing to have a one-and-done superstar that, ESPN, frankly, probably, in theory, could be overhyping. But he's finally starting to play like the number 1 overall pick. And I don't say finally because he was never bad, but I think we've seen the best version of Cooper Flagg here over the last 3 or 4 games, okay? You look at the game on Monday against NC State. It wasn't pretty, but Cooper Flagg was phenomenal. 28.7 rebounds, 3 assists, 24.7 rebounds, 6 assists in the win over Wake, and, of course, 28 points against Boston College last Saturday or 2 Saturdays ago when he returned to New England. So Cooper Flagg's playing his best basketball, but I think more importantly, I know there's this whole thing of throw rivalries out, throw records out the window when there's a rivalry. It's like, well, Maybe, but not in this case, okay? Because Carolina, this is a bad matchup for them. They're small. They don't rebound well. Duke is, as we all know, not only really good, they are statistically the tallest team in all of college basketball. And so I don't really see the pathway for Carolina winning this game, especially on the road. Listen, I know sometimes even at Duke, you can get a good Carolina crowd. If I'm a Carolina fan, I'm not paying $200, $300 to get in the arena to watch this team against against a rival who is clearly better. So with Duke, they're playing really well. I still question how much of this is just that the ACC is not very good, but it is hard for me to find a scenario where Duke wins this game. I'll say Duke 82, North Carolina 68. I just don't think Carolina is very good right now. I expect a Duke win and a convincing Duke win at that. Let's keep it going. Saturday night, Fox, UConn at Marquette, top 25 matchup. Although I think even UConn fans will admit UConn ain't playing like a top 25 team right now. They were trailing DePaul at the half. To their credit, they made a run in the second half. The defense was much better, but they're now traveling to Marquette. These were the two teams that were picked to finish atop the Big East last year. They were 1-2 by a mile in the Big East last year. But like I said, hasn't really worked out from the UConn side of things. From the Marquette side of things, though, they are largely living up to expectations. Marquette, as we speak, is currently 18-3 overall, probably the quietest 18-3 top 10 team in America. And will have won, they're 9-1 in the Big East. They have won 9 of their last 10 overall. The one thing I will say about Marquette is that if you actually look at the schedule, it has been very favorable early for them. It's going to get very tough as the season goes on. Still have 2 games against Duke, still have 2 games against St. John's, which I actually believe is the best team in the Big East this year, not Marquette, not UConn. Still have to go to Nova, still have to go to Creighton. So basically, of the 5 teams that are even in tournament contention right now, Marquette is one of them. They have to play the other 4 teams on the road, plus UConn at home, plus St. John's at home throughout the season. Marquette, despite the fact that I just kind of, was a little bit critical, what you need to know about this game, what they do well is the same thing they always do well. They are great defensively. They force a lot of pressure, and they force a lot of turnovers, okay? I know we don't really talk about turnover margin in basketball the way we do football, but number 2 in the country in turnover margin. They force a lot more turnovers than they allow, top 15 or so in the nationally in total forced turnovers. So that's what they do. And I think it's an interesting spot as they face a UConn team that right now, just transparently, like UConn, it's like the Titanic. They have a bunch of different holes. They try to fill one, the next one pops open, and it's just been an ugly few weeks. But I also would be remiss if I didn't say that it's been an ugly few weeks basically since Liam McNeely, the star freshman, went out with an injury. This was a team that when Liam McNeely got hurt against DePaul on January 1st, they were 11-3, basically had won every game they were on a, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7-game win streak following Maui. And so they were on a 7-game win streak following Maui, playing well, and then your star freshman gets hurt, and then in the least surprising news ever, you haven't been the same team. 4-3 overall. There is a possibility that Liam McNeely comes back for this game. I'm not super optimistic. Dan Hurley said something in the postgame from DePaul about, if we get him back, as if it didn't seem like it was a pressing thing. And if Liam McNeely doesn't play, I think this UConn team has too many holes, okay? Alex Karaban is not playing well right now. I feel bad for him. Doesn't feel like the same player since those missed free throws against Villanova. I remember talking about that a few weeks ago. Hassan Diarra, I think, is dealing with some injuries, but he's playing through them. Jalen Stewart, love the kid, but one good game, one bad game. There's just not a lot of consistency. He's a sophomore. It's okay. He'll get there, but he's not there right now. Really, the only consistent from UConn is Solo Ball, the sophomore, who has been phenomenal all season long, 15 points per game, and had a couple really big shots in that DePaul game. So listen, I think if I knew Liam McNeely was going to be back, I might feel a little bit different. And I might feel a little bit different by the time these two teams play in Connecticut at UConn in about 3 weeks from now, the first full week of March, the final full week of the regular season. With that said, though, it's hard for me right now to expect UConn to go on the road and beat Marquette. So I will take Marquette final score I'll say 74-68. Marquette gets the win. UConn right now, I trust my Huskies, but they're struggling. There's no other way to put it. Last game that I really want to hit on, by the way, I should mention, like, there's a great Friday night game, Indiana at Purdue. Listen, I think Purdue's going to win. Actually, I think the game is at Indiana. I apologize if I said Purdue at Indiana. I think the game, let me check here really quick, is Friday night. I believe it is. Let's make sure. Yeah, it is at Purdue. Purdue's going to win that game going away. There's nothing else to say. You know, Indiana fans have officially turned on Mike Woodson. I don't think there's a ton to add there. Purdue, listen, I made fun of them a lot last year with the Zach Edey stuff. They're actually a much more enjoyable watch right now without a 7'4" guy in the middle of the paint. But I don't see the scenario. Indiana goes in there and gets the win. Let's wrap on that one right there. Top 10 matchup. Florida against Tennessee. Again, it's early. We do not have a point spread on this game. I think it's kind of interesting. One, Tennessee is obviously coming in on a 2-game losing streak, lost at Auburn last week. There's no shame in that. Then you come home, you're a 10.5-point favorite against Kentucky. You do not get the win. So it'll be interesting, Tennessee's mindset on the 2-game losing streak. It'll also be interesting because, remember, Florida embarrassed Tennessee the first time these two teams played. It was at the O-Dome. It was the second game of SEC play. Tennessee was undefeated and ranked number 1 in the country at that point, and Florida won by 30 freaking points, okay? As far as this game is concerned, I'm actually going to do something a little bit surprising. I am going to take Florida to go on the road and Florida to get the upset at, I call it Thompson Bowling Arena. That's not what they call it anymore in Knoxville. I'm going to take them to pull off the upset. Florida's won 5 of 6 in a really tough SEC. And I just think this Tennessee team, I think we're seeing their weaknesses in real time. I think we are seeing the fact that when Chaz Lanier doesn't go for 20, they struggle to put the ball in the basket. So I'm going to go ahead and take Tennessee to lose this game, Florida to win it at home.